What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. We did wide receiver rankings on Wednesday, so today we're talking about running backs. Going to be another very long one, so sit back, hit the like button. Let's get things started off in tier 1, where we have Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, and Jahmyr Gibbs in that order. Start off with Saquon Barkley, age 28 season, 2,283 yards, 15 touchdowns last year. The touchdown worries were completely overblown. He scored 20 touchdowns in 20 games, including playoffs last season. And that is even in a year where Jalen Hurts ran for 19 of his own. What are people expecting to change? I guess that's the big question. It's very popular right now to not have Saquon Barkley at 1 by ADP. It is Bijan Robinson. They have the same coaching staff, the same players, the same elite offensive line. Age 28 is before the age cliff. You shouldn't be too concerned about production at age 28. He likely won't have 378 touches again, but he would have still ranked first in points per game on only 350 touches last season. So he's got room to drop and still be the number 1 running back overall. You're just getting a little bit too cute when you're fading Saquon Barkley. And it's not like he even has to finish number 1. All you'll want when you draft a running back as a top running back in drafts, if they finish somewhere in the top 4, honestly, that is completely fine. You'd like them to finish number 1. But everything is so locked in for Saquon Barkley. You know, the player is amazing. The situation around him, the entire offensive scheme is developed around him. Great playmakers, going to be a good offense again this season. It's just, he's going to be very good. And people are acting like he had 200 more touches than Bijan Robinson last season. He had 13 more touches than Bijan had in the regular season. So if you're going to use touches as a reason to fade Saquon, you might as well do the same with Bijan. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There are only so many players even capable of that many touches. Do not worry about it. Anyone could get injured. But realistically, it's like, yeah, he has so many touches, could get hurt. I want my running backs getting a lot of touches. If it means the injury risk is elevated because I have someone scoring 25 fantasy points per game, so be it. You want to be drafting Saquon this season. Next up, Bijan Robinson. In his 3 starts with Michael Penix Jr. at quarterback last season, Penix had 24, 20, and 30 touches. He gained 103, 98, and 173 yards, and he scored 2 touchdowns in each game. So 6 touchdowns in the 3 games. Penix is still largely an unknown. We think he's going to be a pretty good quarterback, but we can be pretty sure that he's at least better than Kirk Cousins was down the stretch last year. Cousins threw 1 touchdown to 9 interceptions over the final 5 games of the season, or at least the final 5 games of his season, because then he was benched. The Falcons went 1-4 over that time. They scored 14.4 points per game. Even still at that point, being in the playoff hunt, they had to bench Cousins. He was playing so terribly. They ended up not making the playoffs, but it wasn't because of Penix. Penix still played really well. They scored a ton of points per game. It was just that, they happened to go, I think, 1-2 in that stretch and just missed it. But yeah, I think Penix is going to be an upgrade. The Falcons have a really, really bad defense and a strong offensive line. So there's going to be a lot of games where they have to be, playing from behind a little bit, but even with them still scoring points. So it's like they're not going to be scoring 16 points per game and playing from behind every game because they can't score. They're still going to be scoring and still need to push it because their defense is so bad. It's not like a good thing for running backs in that you want your running backs winning. You want them to be like Saquon Barkley last season where they 1 loss on the entire year because in the second half they're winning. Fantasy points are heavily correlated with how many touches you're getting, and running backs get more touches when they're winning late in games. So you still want them to be winning. You would prefer the Falcons have, 13 wins as opposed to 9 or 10 wins, but at least we know that Bijan is also heavily used in the receiving game. And so even when they do fall behind in some of these games, he's going to rack up a lot of reception. So he's not someone like Derrick Henry, where if Derrick Henry were to drop from 13 wins to 8 wins, there would actually be a huge difference in production there because he's going to lose a lot of those carries. He's not going to have the receptions to make up for it. So Bijan's still kind of just like a game script independent, right? It doesn't matter what the game script is. He's going to be really good. They play in a dome. Their division has really bad defenses. He has the third most receptions among running backs over the last 2 seasons. He's still only 23 years old. And his touches per game were really good over the second half of last season. So first half, he has 18.4 touches per game. Still very good at the running back position. 24.2 touches per game from week 9 on. He jumped from 15.8 points per game, which was 10th among running backs, to 20.7, which was 3rd. I will remind you, though, even with that increase in touches, increase in production for running backs, Saquon still outscored him right in the second half of last season because he averaged 35 more rushing yards per game. So again, I think it's completely fine to draft Bijan over Saquon if you're truly scared about the touches. But again, Saquon only had 13 more touches in the regular season than Bijan last season. But if you truly are scared, you want the younger running back, you want someone that you still feel confident in, you're not going to lose probably. I mean, obviously anyone could suffer a torn ACL and that could be the difference there. But on average, if you simulate the season a bunch of times, you're not going to lose because of that decision over time. They're going to be roughly even. Personally, though, I would still take Saquon over Bijan, and I would take both of them over Gibbs. But Gibbs does close out this first tier, and it is very clear these should be the first 3 players in drafts. There's really no argument for taking anyone else that we'll get to in other tiers into this tier 1. These should be the top 3, and again, I think in this order. But yeah, Gibbs, some people think he should go first overall, like among all running backs, all positions, like he should be the first pick in drafts. That's a little bit too aggressive for me. I don't hate the take in that saying like he could be the single most valuable player in all of fantasy. Like I think that take makes a lot of sense. I just think there's too much like projecting that goes into it for you to actually do it and actually take him above these guys. He could absolutely finish as the number 1 overall running back and player, but you know, a few things to break his way. You probably need Saquon to drop off. You probably need just like touchdowns to not go Bijan's way. Like you need a few things to happen there. Still more likely these guys outscore him. Again, don't hate the take because the path is pretty clear to envision, right? Like Ben Johnson leaving is bad, right? It's going to make the offense less efficient. They're going to score fewer points. That is bad for running backs. But it's much worse for someone like David Montgomery than it is Jahmyr Gibbs. The Lions only lost 3 games last season, but in those games, Jahmyr Gibbs averaged 6 receptions per game. He scored 23 half PPR points per game. So if the Lions are just losing a few more games this season, or at minimum just falling behind in the second half a little bit more often, we can see a lot of games where he has 5, 6, 7, 8 receptions. He's a guy who can have 100 rushing yards and 100 receiving yards. For those of you in like bonus leagues that you get maybe like 2-3 point bonus for 100 rushing or receiving, he could hit both of them. So he does have significant upside. Again, at the end of the day, I think these are the clear top 3. But among these top 3, you don't have a David Montgomery. So there's no David Montgomery on the Eagles or on the Falcons. David Montgomery is still a very talented running back. Dan Campbell's still there, and he is in absolute love with David Montgomery. David Montgomery will be used, maybe not exclusively, but many times at the goal line. Maybe Gibbs takes over a larger share of the backfield this season, but it's maybe. Like all these things, like maybe this happens, maybe that happens for Gibbs. We know what's going to happen for Saquon and for Bijan. So again, I think those two should be at the top because they don't have a really good second running back behind them that is going to take touchdowns away. And that could be, you know, kind of the thing that hurts Gibbs and kind of keeps them away from that top end is if they do see this reduction in touchdowns and they still have that split, well, now we could see the touchdowns drop too much to where the receiving numbers don't make up for it. Tier 2, we have 4 players. Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Jeanty, Derrick Henry, and Devon Achane. This is an unbelievably polarizing tier, which, you know, crazy to kind of think that David Montgomery, right? Someone who historically you have 31.7, something like that. You can see on the screen. He'll be over 31 and a half years old when the season starts. He is probably the least polarizing player among the 4, which normally you'd be like, how on earth is someone that old going this early in drafts? He'd be the most polarizing, but truly, these other 3 are extraordinarily polarizing players, so a very polarizing tier overall. So let's go over it. McCaffrey, I have him first in the tier, 4th overall. In 2019, McCaffrey gained nearly 2,400 yards, scored 19 touchdowns, single-handedly won championships for those who drafted him. You go to 2020, 2021, he was running back 1 and 8 in points per game, but he missed most of those seasons due to injury. 2022, he gains 1,880 yards, 13 touchdowns, wins leagues for those who drafted him. 2023, gains over 2,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, again, a league winner for those who drafted him. 2024, gets hurt again. So all told, it's a 50-50 proposition. Over the last 6 years, 3 times he's been a league winner. He's honestly been like the player you need in 2 of those seasons. Like, it was almost impossible to win if you didn't have him, which is not something you can say about very many players. But in the other 3 years, he's been probably the worst pick you could have made in drafts and really hurt teams. Like, you do have to realize that, like, when your 7th round pick gets hurt, who cares? You probably were going to miss at that pick anyways. It doesn't really impact things. When your 1st round pick, and especially last year, we was going number 1 overall, that does hurt a lot more. So you do have to be right a little bit more often this early. At age 29, he's going to be 29.3 to start the season. Tail end of the age cliff. I guess not tail end of the age cliff. Tail end of his career, beginning of the age cliff. This is where we start to worry about running backs not producing at as high of a level, but that's an average. So when we look at someone like Derrick Henry, who we'll get to, well, Derrick Henry is a freak athlete, right? He is someone that has proven he can be amazing at an elevated point in his career. McCaffrey is also a freak athlete. We know that if he stays healthy this season, he is going to be amazing. That is an absolute fact. There is no chance that this season, if McCaffrey is healthy, he's going to be like a running back 2. And that is very beneficial when you're drafting him, knowing if he goes out there, he's probably going to project every week as a top 2 running back. There's a lot of value in that. Deebo Samuel is gone. Brandon Ayuk is unlikely to be 100% at any point in the season, but definitely not to start off. We now have Jauan Jennings either saying, give me a new contract or trade me away. They do not have the depth of playmakers they used to have. And in those previous years, when they had extreme depth, he was still the single most valuable player in all fantasy. So the upside is crazy this season. They have the easiest schedule in the league. That's obviously great for running backs. Again, he's going to be fed the football. He'll probably honestly be the number 1 running back in fantasy while healthy, but it's on you to decide if you are okay taking on that risk, because there's basically like a 50% chance that he ends up being the worst pick you can make and a 50% chance he ends up being the best pick you can make. So I don't believe a player like that should be in tier 1. I don't believe he should go in the top 6 picks of draft. I think it should be the clear, top 3 wide receivers and the clear top 3 running backs. That should be the top 6 picks in all 1 quarterback formats. But as you get later on, you got to make that call. Do you want McCaffrey? Do you want to go with Jeanty, or do you want to go with one of the amazing wide receivers this season? If you are someone who would jump off a bridge if McCaffrey got hurt, don't take him, right? Opt for one of the elite wide receivers or Jeanty. But if you're someone who's just like, Nick, I want to go for it, I want to try and win my league, take McCaffrey, because that's the easiest path you have to picking someone who can be a league winner. But if you don't want him, Ashton Jeanty is also awesome. Jeanty does not have the same ceiling that McCaffrey has, but in theory, he's safer. I say in theory because it's like, well, coming into the league, we didn't think that McCaffrey would get hurt this much, and then he did. So it's like we just don't have data on these rookies. So who knows? What if Jeanty is someone who actually suffers a ton of injuries and he wasn't any safer than McCaffrey? But in theory, though, most players you can argue are safer than McCaffrey. So you would think he'd have a better chance of staying healthy. But Jeanty's a freak. He's an absolute freak athlete. Over 2,600 rushing yards, not total yards, rushing yards last season, 29 rushing touchdowns, 2nd most rushing yards all time behind Barry Sanders last year. He forced 163 missed tackles as per PFF. That was 48 more than any other running back since 2014 when they started charting. That's incredible. Like, that is absolutely insane. He's obviously got no competition on the team. He's going to be on the field as much as he can handle. The only time he'll come off the field is when he can't breathe. Then he's going to catch his breath and go back onto the field. Chip Kelly likes to play fast, but also likes to lean run heavy. So, not too much of a concern here for play volume, not a concern here for total touches. The drawback is the offense. Like, even though I think they're going to run a lot of plays, I think Geno Smith is an unbelievable signing for them. He's going to be great. They have good playmakers. It's still the Raiders. They're still not going to be, a top 10 offense. They play in a really tough division for defenses. So he's a lock for touches. Touchdowns could be a question mark, but who knows? I mean, maybe they get into the red zone and they're like, just give him the ball every single time. No one can tackle him. And maybe he, even on a team that scores, 21 points per game, maybe he can still rack up, 12 to 14 touchdowns. At that point, given the amount of volume he should receive, he should have no problem finishing as a mid to high end running back one. So again, I still prefer McCaffrey because the ceiling on him truly is 25, 26 points per game if this offense just has absolutely no one to use, and still a Shanahan offense where, they're just going to be efficient no matter who is on the field. But 50% of the time, he's going to just tank your season. So if you can't deal with that, Jeanty, go up there. And I will say, if McCaffrey suffers literally any injury, besides from a hangnail, if he gets hurt in camp and misses time, I am going to drop McCaffrey because it'll just be the start of what we've seen a lot of times. But if he stays healthy in camp, he'll stay at this ranking. Next up, Derrick Henry. You could almost, I would say, make a mini tier of McCaffrey, Jeanty, and then a little bit below have Henry and Achane, because I don't think there's an argument for Henry, Achane over these guys. We'll get to Achane in a second. People are in love with him, but I do think Derrick Henry deserves to be next. He was great, obviously, last season. I said Derrick Henry was the single best pick you could make in fantasy last season. I would say Saquon probably took that prize, but I'd argue that Henry was the second best pick you could make, over 2,100 yards, 18 touchdowns. Biggest issue with him is obviously the age, right? He's over 31 years old. He's had over 2,500 career touches, but, you could have said pretty much all of that last season, and he had 5.9 yards per carry. And the Ravens aren't concerned. It'd be different if the Ravens were I don't know if we want to keep him. They gave him a 2-year, $30 million contract extension, $24 million guaranteed. They would not be willing to do that if they were assuming his role was not going to be the same. So we should assume the same production here. Another 1,700, 1,800 plus yards, 15, 16 touchdowns. He has 7 straight years over 1,075 yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 in a row, over 1,375 yards and 12 touchdowns last year. Again, at a very old age running back, 3rd in explosive run rate, 7th in missed tackles forced per attempt. He had the 4th lowest stuff rate in the league. He was awesome last season, even on an elevated workload. He remains an amazing pick, because even if he falls off, who cares? Even if you think, oh, what if he goes down to 4.6 yards per carry because he's still going to break off some long runs, goes down there, it really doesn't matter. We know every time they get into the red zone, as we talked about last season, Lamar doesn't run the ball when they get close. He'll score rushing touchdowns from far away, but Lamar Jackson does not run the ball inside the 5-yard line. So every time they get in close, it is going to be Derrick Henry getting the football. So at a bare minimum, even if the rushing production isn't as good, even if he stays low in receiving, he's going to get a ton of touchdowns, and that's really all that matters. If you have a running back getting, 15 to 17 touchdowns, they're just going to be super valuable in fantasy. So locked in role there. He has to get hurt to not pay off his ADP. At 7, final player in this tier is Achane. Again, honestly, he draws the largest criticism from any angle. There are people who are that's ridiculous you rank him so high, and there's also people that are that's ridiculous you rank him so low. I've seen people saying he should be the number 1. That is crazy to me to actually say he should be number 1, but there's a lot of people who think he should be a mid-first round pick this season. I can't go that high. I think that's a little bit aggressive, kind of ranking him at that running back 3, running back 4 spot. I agree he's a great pick. I think he kind of deserves to go at the turn of round 1, and it really becomes how do you want to start? Do you want to do 2 wide receivers? Do you want to take one of these awesome wide receivers? I think at the tail end of 1, you want at least one of these wide receivers who are incredible this season. But if you want to do that and pair him with Achane, I think that's an unbelievable start this season. It's just he obviously comes with the risk, right? He was insane when you had Tua healthy, but he was almost unplayable with Tua injured, and with the concussions, and because they added Zach Wilson. Obviously we don't care about Zach Wilson, because that's the backup situation. It's not an amazing feeling every time that you see Tua get hit, knowing okay, that could tank the entire offense, and it could literally turn Achane from a top 5 running back into someone outside the top 40, and that doesn't feel good. I have some also concerns about his status as the goal line back. He was really, really bad as a goal line running back last season. I don't remember the exact stat, but I think he had 12 quote unquote goal line, really inside the 5. That's kind of goal line touches. I think he had 12 carries for negative yardage. He was really, really inefficient. And so when you see that happen, and then go out and draft Ollie Gordon, who could literally get cut. There's so much variance to what Ollie Gordon could be. But Ollie Gordon is 6'1", 226 pounds, and was the best running back in all of college football in 2023 as a 19-year-old sophomore. I know he fell off last season. I know he didn't get drafted maybe as high as people. I mean, people thought he was going to be the number 1 running back overall 2 years ago. I know he declined somewhat. But again, this is a player who was the number 1 overall prospect in 2023. Someone that talented and that size could just be someone they want to use at the goal line. And if that happens, there's a chance they're why don't we just go back to the days where we had Mostert and Achane? Because that's when this offense was humming. I mean, they were so good when they were using Mostert and Achane interchangeably. Mostert was the guy that bring in the red zone, but between the 20s, it was interchangeable. They were both staying fresh. They were highly productive, super efficient. They might do that. And if that happens, you don't want to be taking Achane in the mid-first round. So that's probably something we kind of figure out in camp. If that turns out to be the case, his ADP will drop. So it kind of is going to be taken into account there. Yeah, the upside is truly undeniable. He is a running back that could have 80 receptions, right? He is a running back that could go back to averaging, 7.8 yards per carry as a rookie. He didn't hit in the big plays last season, and he still had 4.5 yards per carry. That feels like his floor. He could have 6 yards per carry this season, score 15 touchdowns, 80 receptions. That is in his range of outcomes. So I get wanting to take him in round 1. Again, I think the risk factors kind of keep him at the end of the second tier and kind of keep him as an early second to late first round pick, just at the turn of 12-team league, where again, I think a smart strategy would be taking one of the wide receivers and pairing him with Henry or Achane. I think it's just a good strategy this season. Tier 3 is massive. A lot of players in here. I could see a lot of things shifting around as well. There's a lot of very strong players in this range. Maybe camp reports kind of changes how we view things. But as of right now, I do really like how I have the rankings. I think it's really, really strong how I have them on the screen right now. We'll start off, Jonathan Taylor. He's averaged at least 74 rushing yards per game in all 5 seasons of his career. He is still in his prime. He has zero threat to his early downward goal line role. Giddens is a theoretical threat to the passing down role, but Jonathan Taylor's never been a high-end pass catcher anyways, so I don't think it matters at all. If Giddens goes out there and he commands some snaps on third downs, he gets a couple dump offs, takes some passing down work, I just don't think it matters that much. Jonathan Taylor is basically discount Derrick Henry. When the Colts are winning and they're scoring a lot, he's going to get 20, 25 plus carries, multi-touchdown upside. In those games, he's going to be more than a 50% chance at scoring, maybe even more than a 65% chance. When we project them for 27 points, he's going to be minus 150 to score a touchdown. When they lose, it's not going to be as great because he's just, again, a player like Derrick Henry, where when they're losing late, he's just not as productive. He is someone you want them to be winning in the second half of the games, but he'll still be featured when they get in close. He's always going to be able to save his day with a touchdown. I think he should lead this tier because he is the most talented running back left on the board. He does have the most locked-in role. We know the touch is going to be incredible. We know the rushing volume and the rushing touchdowns are going to be there. And there's just no chance. With some of these running backs, there's a chance we see a decline in their role. Maybe some other early down guys mix in. There is just no way. I cannot fathom a world where anyone steals meaningful early down workload. They'll get a couple carries, but Jonathan Taylor is going to have a ton of carries and a ton of touchdowns this season. And you can't really say that about a lot of these other running backs. And so, again, I think he deserves to be top of this tier. Plus, they play in a dome, and they should be a better offense than last season because if, it's going to be a battle basically between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones starts the season. I think it would be good for AR to maybe not start the year. But at worst, if Daniel Jones is playing, he's probably going to outperform what Anthony Richardson did last year. And if Anthony Richardson is playing, it's because they think he can play better than last year. So regardless of the situation, and then if he doesn't, they'll put Daniel Jones back out there. regardless, they should have better quarterback play than last season, and that will translate to Jonathan Taylor. After JT, we have Bucky Irving. I'm sure everyone's heard by now, his starting left tackle is probably going to miss the first month of the season. It's a little bit early to kind of know the exact timeline, but that seems like it's going to happen. So it's a downgrade, but it's not the end of the world. He's still going to be good in those games. You're still going to start him. And then once his left tackle is back, it's going to be like nothing happened. And end of season matters more than anything anyways, and he'll be good to go then. So I don't think it's a huge deal, but it's of course going to impact his projection just a little bit if they're just not as good early on, because Baker also needs a better offensive line. He gets flustered a little bit with pressure. But Bucky's awesome. Like, I don't want anyone to not draft Bucky because of the left tackle missing a couple games, is basically what I want to say. But basically before, I thought there was more of a case for potentially Bucky over JT. I don't think as much anymore. He can do it, but I don't think it's as smart of a play. But yeah, he's been awesome. This last year, we liked him. I don't think anyone, even like the biggest Bucky Irving fan in the world, thought that he was going to do what he did last season. Over 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns as a rookie. I think it's funny when we kind of look at, and I mentioned this in a video earlier in the offseason, about how like people kind of anchor to draft picks. And so for good reason as well, because we have seen sometimes later draft picks in like the actual NFL draft, they do sometimes just like see their role just like taken away from them. And then we're like, what the heck? But they don't really do that as much with early round picks, mainly like first, second round picks. So when you look at it though, Gibbs, Bijan, those are the biggest indicators of like, year one, 1,261 yards, 11 touchdowns for Gibbs, 1,463 yards, 8 touchdowns for Bijan. But again, 1,500 yards and 8 touchdowns for Bucky. So Bucky was better than both of them. And yet last year, they became top 6 picks. So after that rookie season, Bijan, Gibbs, they were going in like the early first round. Not Bucky. Bucky goes in the late second round just because he was drafted later. So he is a really, really strong pick. And even like underlying metrics were great, right? It wasn't just like the counting stats. Like he was great. 6th best explosive run rate, 3rd best in forcing missed tackles, 4th best in yards after contact per attempt. Bucks are going to be good again. 8th highest implied team total. They also have a great playoff schedule. 2nd highest points per game projection for the Bucks in the fantasy playoffs. So again, we love that for running backs. If they're scoring a lot of points on offense, it's a better chance that they're scoring points as a running back for touchdowns. Really, again, the only case for a case against really Bucky for JT, why I have him over, is Sean Tucker and Rachaad White. Like JT is JT, and maybe Giddens mixes in. But we know for a fact Rachaad White is a bad running back on a like pure running back standpoint, but amazing in the receiving game. So he's going to maintain that role. And Sean Tucker always gets hype, is an explosive player, is a good athlete. So like maybe he mixes in a little bit. And there's just more of a chance that they steal workload than anyone steals workload from JT. And there's also a chance that like Bucky was featured late last season because they had to win, right? They had to win out. They had to keep winning games to make playoffs. Well, to start the year, at least, they don't have to win out, of course. So maybe they're like, listen, we don't need to feature Bucky as much as we did late last season. Maybe we can mix these guys in a little bit more, and that's going to hurt. We want all the touches we can get at running back. At 10, we have Josh Jacobs. Jacobs, at least 33 receptions in 5 consecutive seasons. He's coming off 1,671 yards and 16 touchdowns last year after the community just wrote him off for being dust at 26. Like, it was crazy last summer, people being like, he's cooked. If you ever say a running back is cooked when they don't have a long injury history at 26 years old, like, what are you even talking about? But I would say 90% of people were just like, I can't draft Jacobs, even in a great situation last year. That was one of the biggest hits we had besides Derrick Henry last season. Now, I'm not projecting a ton to change on the Packers. I think they were a good enough team last year that they'll probably implement a lot of the same things they did this year. But the only changes I see are, one, increased touch competition, not only with Marshawn Lloyd getting healthy, but they did draft Matthew Golden in round 1. To me, they started off pass heavy. They started off being like, we want to throw the football. And then they're like, okay, these guys aren't doing it. Like, these guys are not, Wicks can't catch. Like, these other guys aren't getting open or producing enough. So they go out and draft Golden. To me, that indicates, again, they want to go back to doing that, and they just need some better wide receivers to implement that game plan. Well, that's bad for Jacobs because obviously if they throw the ball more, that's not as good. You can also look at it and say, not only was that the case, but they had the injury, the groin injury to Jordan Love. And after that point, they also did a more run-heavy offense. Maybe that was a larger injury than we were kind of being told. So that kind of issue is there. Again, could they have more competition for touches, not only from just being a more pass-heavy team, but then also, again, Marshawn Lloyd. I think Marshawn Lloyd's good. Like, I actually do think he's a good running back, an explosive running back. I think he's actually going to earn touches this season if he can stay healthy. And so that combination kind of holds him back a little bit. And then also 16 touchdowns is a lot. Like, it's not a crazy thing to say that someone might not repeat having 16 touchdowns. Derrick Henry is the ultimate touchdown scorer, right? He's only done that 3 times in 9 years. So again, expecting someone, literally any human being, to have back-to-back 16 touchdown seasons is a lot. Like it should be a hot take saying he's going to do that again. The passive take, the correct take, is probably that he's not going to do that. He's probably going to be closer to like 12 or 13. And so if he was 7th in points per game last season, we're expecting more passing volume, more competition, fewer touchdowns. I think ranking him 10th just makes sense. Still low in running back 1. Still a player that you want to have on your team. Still a player you're going to get plenty if you kind of draft him at that running back 10 spot. But again, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to move him up to where he was last season. After Jacobs, we have Chase Brown. Over the first 8 weeks last year with Zach Moss healthy, he averaged 12 touches per game. Zach Moss also averaged 12 touches per game. And Moss, outsnapped him 62% to 39% for Brown. Then you see Zach Moss get injured. They don't trust any of the backup running backs that they have. They try and bring in Kaleb Herbert, and I think he fumbled on like the first play that he was there. They just didn't trust anyone. 82% of the offensive snaps from that point on for Chase Brown. He was the single most featured running back in all of the NFL. That is the only thing that scares me and why I can't move him higher. And right now, like, I think this is a pretty good ranking for him. You will still get him a decent amount as well. The scary part is, like, he was the single most featured running back in the NFL, and I don't think anyone can look at the current list on the screen and say that, okay, among everyone here, who's going to be the most featured? It's probably not Chase Brown. They have an entire offseason. They probably don't want to have him super featured. They brought back Zach Moss, who they restructured the contract, so who knows, he could even get cut. But, like, someone's going to get cut between Moss, Pirine, and Taj is a rookie, so it's probably not going to be him. So one of Pirine or Moss is probably not going to be there. But the point would be, if they have the battle between Pirine and Moss, and one of them wins it, and they bring in Taj Brooks, could just one of them, one of those three, earn something, earn any sort of weekly role, and that would hurt Brooks, because even though he was the most featured, he was only 6th in points per game. So he was still inefficient on the touches, which also isn't great, because shouldn't you be super efficient on the Bengals? Like, he's going to have receptions. You're going to have touchdown upside. Like, defenses are terrified of the passing attack, so no one is stacking the box against you. Like, you should be highly efficient, and he was relatively inefficient, relatively average on like a per touch basis. So that's the only concern into why I can't move him really higher. But having him 11th, I would still take him ahead of everyone we have here. I take him ahead of Breece, Kyren, Hampton, Cook, who are also incredible running backs. So this is still a pretty high ranking. I just can't move him higher because I don't know that he's going to be as featured, and he kind of has to be like pretty darn featured. He has to be one of the 5 most featured running backs in the NFL to be a back half running back 1, which is what he'd have to be to pay off the CDP. So again, I still like him. 11th overall for running backs, but I can't move him too much higher than that. At 12, we have Breece Hall, who honestly, he seems to be the forgotten man this season. He's still 24, so if anyone says he's cooked, I swear to God, he's 24 years old. He's coming off 1,585 yards, 9 touchdowns in 2023. 1,359 yards, 8 touchdowns last season. I feel like people think he fell off a cliff. 1,359 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. He had 76 and 57 receptions over the last 2 seasons. Reception numbers, I mean, probably going to drop just given how run heavy the team's going to be. But who knows? Because no quarterback dumps off more to running backs at like a higher rate than Justin Fields. So even if they're running the ball a lot, if he is their best running back and Fields is dumping off a lot, maybe he does have 60, 65 receptions this season to go along with 1 million carries, because he's probably going to have 1 million carries this season. I don't want to compare him to Jacobs last year because it's a completely different situation. I mean, Jacobs was a former rushing champion. Like he was signing a huge contract with a great, increase in offensive environment. That's not the case for Breece. I think more like vibes wise, like the vibes around Breece Hall feel similar to Jacobs. This is a man that was unquestioned, an early first round pick, like over his career. Like he has been someone, it's only been a couple seasons, but he's been someone that it's like, yeah, you take him in the early first round because he's unbelievable. Then he has two, not bad, just like okay seasons. And all of a sudden we're like banishing him to the third round. And it sounds like no one wants to draft him. So again, vibes wise, it feels similar to Jacobs where people are just writing him off as cooked, but there's no real reason. Like he got hurt. Like it's okay for a running back to tear their ACL and then be good after that. Like Breece Hall was unbelievable. He's a high-end prospect as a rookie. He completely breaks out, just shatters expectations, and the expectations were already really high. He does unbelievable as a rookie, tears his ACL. It happens, right? Works his way back from that in 2023, finishes the season pretty strong before just like, a 2024 season where they had terrible coaching, the offense completely fell apart. Like there were a lot of reasons outside of his control as to why things did not work last season. But again, he's 24 years old. And I think the coaching staff is going to improve. It can't get worse. So I would imagine it improves to some degree. We know they're going to run the ball a ton. And what happens if they're lying to us and they don't opt for a committee? Because like realistically, it's kind of funny. So the coaching staff comes from Detroit. Detroit is also known for just being like, I love him. Like Dan Campbell goes out there and he says, I love every player. That's kind of what the coaching staff is doing. So I don't know if it's maybe something they kind of learned in Detroit, being like, talk good about your players. There's really no negative to doing that. So I get it. But they've been talking up this committee, being like, yeah, we're going to use all these guys. But it's like, Braylon Allen was terrible last season. Highly inefficient, no explosiveness. Isaiah Davis, I like, but I'm not going to think that he's some amazing running back. He had 39 total touches. Like on a per touch basis, he was good, but he had 39 touches. If he had 5 more touches and they were all bad, like his stats may have been worse. So, and he was a 5th round pick. I think Braylon Allen was a 4th round pick. Like there's a world where Breece Hall goes out there in week 1. He's an 80% snap share. He has 27 touches. And we're like, oh, we're idiots. Like, why are we not drafting 100% Breece Hall in round 3? So I don't know. I feel like maybe we're overthinking things a little bit here. He is far and away the best running back. Unless this staff is just like dumb, he's probably going to have over 1,200, 1,300 yards. He's probably going to score double-digit touchdowns. Like, I don't know. He feels like a steal where he's going right now. So that's another reason why it's like, you kind of talk negatively about some of these running backs early on, and you're like, why aren't you ranking them higher? It's like, look at Breece Hall is the 12th running back. Like, we have a lot of really good running backs this season. I don't know. I think he's being severely undervalued. So we get to our next guy, Kyren Williams. I think Kyren's also a pretty good pick. It's just I have a difficult time taking him sometimes because there's other very good running backs that should be drafted ahead of him. But yeah, Kyren was like the running back 2? I don't remember what it was 2 years ago. He was a really high running back 2 years ago, running back 8 in points per game last season. You know that Sean McVay loves him. Like they're like best friends. So you know that he's going to be on the field a lot, even lost a lot of fumbles last year. So if that continues, maybe the best friendship turns into a normal friendship. But he likes him. He trusts him. I think there is merit to the fact that McVay also talks about needing explosiveness. It's something you need in the NFL level at this point. Like today's NFL, you do need running backs to be explosive. Like it's relatively rare that these really high-end teams have just like plotters that get you like consistent 4 yards, because that's what Kyren is. He's going to get what's blocked for him. He's not going to make huge mistakes besides, again, the fumbles. But he's not going to do anything else. He's not going to catch passes. He's going to be great at the goal line, but he's not going to rip off big plays. And you kind of need running backs to rip off big plays in today's NFL. So I think that's why they drafted Jarquez Hunter. I do think he's going to take more work than Corum did last season, because Corum is just not that good of a running back. But at the end of the day, he's probably still going to have Kyren, still going to have a lot of touches. He's still probably going to have a lot of touchdowns, and he's probably going to be a good running back. Why I don't draft him a ton is because I don't think he goes back to the days of being like a top 5 running back. I think he falls off from what he did last season because he was very featured. So when you have these running backs that need volume, need touchdowns, if either one of those two things go away, that's obviously not good, right? And I think there's a possibility that Adams coming to town. Well, maybe Adams is the ultimate touchdown scorer, so maybe they throw for more touchdowns when they get in close. Okay, that hurts. Maybe they do just give a little bit more workload to Kyren, and if you just lose a couple touches per game, you're losing value as a running back in fantasy. And we already know that McVay will never throw to running back, so they're going to be bottom 3 in running back target share. So just because of all those factors, and because, again, there are so many amazing running backs going ahead of him, I can't move him higher. But I'm not going to be sad if you end up with a back-to-back a wide receiver start. You're like, holy cow, how did I get these 2 wide receivers? And then you get Kyren as your running back 1, and you pair him with Omarion Hampton that we have here. If you actually started off with those 4 players, 2 sick wide receiver 1s, Kyren and Hampton, yeah, then the risk kind of goes away that Kyren maybe isn't as good, because maybe you're fine just kind of taking that high-end running back to production, because it's still a really good team on a condensed, kind of opportunity share, and he's proven he can be a top 8 running back in back-to-back seasons. But I still like Hampton more. Again, from a value perspective, because Kyren goes, and then there's kind of a gap, and then you have Hampton. I'll go over in a little bit, maybe in 15 minutes in this video time, who my favorite running backs are, because I think there's kind of a clear group that I'd be targeting this season. Hampton is one of them. This kid's a stud. And I have no real update on the Najee situation. I'm assuming he'll end up being fine. So I'm not really this ranking it factors in a very small amount, the 4th of July incident, just being I don't know if Najee has an eye anymore. I have no idea. He's on the NFI list, non-football injury list. He could come out of that as I'm recording. Literally at any point in time, they could take him off that list. So there's just a lot of unknowns here. So again, I'm kind of factoring in my expectation right now with this ranking is that he misses the first week of camp and then comes back. I mean, that's just a kind of a guess I have right now. Every day beyond that Najee is not out there, I'm going to move just a little bit of production over to Hampton and away from Najee, because Hampton's awesome. And the only thesis around not drafting him earlier than this would be that to open the season, you kind of want a guy this early to be good and to be relied on. You want to be losing games early on because Hampton's still splitting with Najee. Every day in camp that Najee's not out there, Hampton just gains more of the trust of the coaching staff. And so if we're going to start the season already where Hampton's the featured back, then oh my goodness, is he a round 2 pick? He is unbelievable. 4.46 40, 221 pounds, 94th percentile speed score, 91st percentile burst. It's a perfect landing spot because he's capable in the receiving game, but it's mostly a screen guy. He's not going to go out there and run crisp routes, right? He's not McCaffrey. He's not Gibbs. He's not one of those running backs. He's not even Rashad White. It's he can catch dump offs though, and he can turn those into big gains. But that's all they will ask him to do. This coaching staff does not want targets going as much to running backs, just kind of as a scheme. I know that theoretically Justin Herbert has done that, but not with this coaching staff. This coaching staff wants all the workload on the ground for running backs with some dump offs in some screens, but in some just kind of dump offs there. But that's great, right? That plays into his skill set perfectly. The Chargers are going to be a high scoring team. They have a strong, not elite, but a strong top 10 offensive line. They have great coaching. I trust their coaching staff to play the players that should be played. There's nothing bad to say. When you watch Hampton play, hopefully not in the preseason, honestly, hopefully they bubble wrap him. When you watch him go out there and run, you're going to be holy cow. It's going to be the same thing with Jeanty. I feel people are hesitant to take Jeanty super early. Don't be. He's unbelievable. Hampton's that same way. He's such a good running back. He's going to be amazing in the system. Honestly, if he's as good as I think, Najee's going to be a non-factor later in the year, and that's when it matters the most. But again, you just don't want to move him too high, because if they're splitting a little bit to open the season, because Najee's not a bad running back, if they're splitting to start the year, then there's just some risk there, and that you're not getting the points you need from a running back this early. But again, I think he's awesome. He has a top 5 ceiling if everything hits this season. Then finally, kind of close out this tier is James Cook, who I honestly think could be in the next tier. I think he could start the next tier. I don't really know how I wanted to have that. Heading into last season, the narrative was he couldn't score touchdowns. You can't draft James Cook because he doesn't score touchdowns. And then he scored 18 touchdowns, which is kind of hilarious. The issue is, okay, what happens now? Is he someone that can't score touchdowns and got super lucky? Is he someone that was getting unlucky and actually scores a lot of touchdowns? I don't know. I mean, my guess is it's probably somewhere in the middle. We should probably project him closer to 9 to 11, in which case, if he's going to lose that many touchdowns and he was only 10th in points per game last season, well, that's a big drop off, right? Because he was only 10th in points per game on 18 touchdowns. He only had 12.9 carries per game. And Ray Davis is pretty good. So there's a world where it goes down. He's also holding out. What if he holds out into camp? Like right now, I don't know, right? But every day that he holds out in camp is another day that Ray Davis can earn the trust of the coaching staff, and he can kind of get that shift going in his direction a little bit more. I think a contract will be done because James Cook has no leverage, and he knows that. But, I mean, if the man drops to even 12 touchdowns, which is an incredible amount, I don't know. I'm a little shaky here. So I haven't been really drafting him a whole lot. Again, I think he's a good running back, an explosive running back that fits this team well. But what if Josh Allen just runs for more, throws for more? What if, Ray Davis runs for some, gets more of an early down workload? Like, there are a lot of things that could occur to where he's not scoring 18 touchdowns and still only being a low-end running back one. So, again, I think he could start the next tier. It's just that, like, he is still a good running back, and it is still a good system. Like, I still think he's going to be really good, but, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself already into putting him into tier 4. So that's it for tier 3. Tier 4, another 7. Start things off, Ken Walker, another one I'm going to talk about being one of my favorite running backs this season. I know he hasn't hit yet, but he's so clearly a really good running back. He just needs to stay healthy. I know that he hasn't been able to, but I don't think you could put him into that same class as Christian McCaffrey, being like, oh, he can't stay healthy. He's just suffered a few unfortunate injuries. I think he can stay healthy. Tough to know what exactly to expect from Seattle this season, but the Ryan Grubb experiment was a failure. I trust Clint Kubiak. I think that Clint Kubiak has a history of success in the NFL. Ryan Grubb was college, right? It was like, let's try this. Maybe he can be something, but it turns out he wasn't. Kubiak has done it at the NFL level. Kubiak has shown that he will use play action. He will use pre-snap motion. He will get his players open. He will create explosives in the ground game. Like, he will do the things that lead to league-winning seasons for players. Walker turns 25 early in the season. He's the best running back in the roster, and he fits the scheme that they're going to run this season better than Charbonnet does. I'm telling you guys, if he's healthy, he can be a top 7 running back. Like, I know that seems crazy, but the receptions are going to be there. He couldn't hit last year because the line couldn't block for him. They fixed that a little bit, and I think the scheme is going to allow that to open up a little bit more this season. I think the receptions will be there, the touchdowns will be there, the yards will be there. I think everything is going to come together this season for Ken Walker. He's one of those guys that I think is really going to crush it. We're going to be a league winner this season. We also know Kubiak definitely going to use, like, not much 11 personnel. So 11 personnel is 3 wide receivers. He's going to use more heavy packages. They'll use a fullback. They'll use more tight ends. That's going to help out the run game as well. Honestly, it's unfortunate. Like, maybe not unfortunate for us if we can capitalize on, this ground game and drafting Ken Walker. It's unfortunate for the Saints last season that, like, do you remember how awesome they were to start the season? Like, they were dropping like 45 points a game to open the year. And then the entire offense got hurt. Like, literally, their quarterback goes down. Their whole wide receiver room goes down. Their line, like, everything got hurt. The defense got hurt. It was crazy to see every week another, like, high-end player getting injured on that team. If that didn't happen, and Kamara still had an unbelievable year. Like, Kamara was still, I think it was his most explosive season since 2020. He was great as a pure runner. Like, at a pretty old age, I don't know. I mean, he got so much out of Kamara last season, so much out of this team when they had nothing, and so much out of them when they had something that, I don't know. I think Kubiak might just be a really good coach. So while I don't believe in Sam Darnold, I'm a Kubiak believer. I think Ken Walker is an unbelievable running back. I think you should be drafting a ton of him in this range. After Walker, I think it's Joe Mixon. I think people are just scared of the age, but, like, people really don't like Joe Mixon this season. Sure, he's 29, but it's not like a running back can't do it at 29 years old. He's played at least 14 games in 7 of 8 seasons in the NFL. He's been between 18.2 and 23.3 touches per game in every season since 2018. Sure, they signed Nick Chubb. Sure, they drafted Woody Marks, but let's be honest with ourselves. Like, those guys are not it. They're not a threat to Joe Mixon's workload. He's going to be good. The biggest threat to his production is offensive line play, but they were trash last season. So, like, they already were bad, and he finished 9th in points per game. The expectation is they'll be bad, but a little bit better maybe this season. And so, again, he was 9th in points per game last year. We're thinking that they're probably going to be a better team. I don't know. It's kind of weird that people are, like, completely fading him. Maybe he doesn't have a top 5 ceiling. All right, sure. But he's probably going to be like a low end 1 to high end 2 in points per game. And so he's a pretty darn good pick where he's going right now. After Mixon, we have Chuba Hubbard. I almost never draft Chuba Hubbard. So he's one that I really just can't get behind. I cannot justify drafting Chuba Hubbard over Ken Walker and Mixon, and you will have to do that if you want to get Chuba Hubbard. I know he got the contract. I know he was really good last season, but it was mostly volume-based. The Panthers, here's the thing. So on a weekly basis, when a running back gets injured, we see the backup get a ton of touches because, number one, they might only have one or two other running backs active. Number two, the game plan isn't just going to completely shift. Like, they can move some things around, but like they kind of just throw the other running back in, use that game plan. You can kind of view that on a larger scale for the season, just happening on a smaller scale, if that kind of makes sense. View the season as a game. They went into last season, pretend it's a game, where they're like, okay, we're going to have Chuba open the season, and we're going to have Jonathan Brooks come in at some point, and then we'll kind of split them with maybe Brooks taking over. That was the game plan going into last year. Then Brooks re-tears the ACL instantly, and they don't really have a backup running back behind him, so a third-string running back they trust. And so they did what you would do on a single game basis, and they'd be like, okay, well, here's the game plan. Chuba's playing fine. You got to just ride him rest of the season. I think with an entire offseason to readjust the game plan, we see what happens on a single game in season. On a single game, you a lot of times see the backup in a smaller role the next week. And you're like, what the heck happened? They had time to game plan. They elevated another running back. They brought someone else in. They did something to where they shifted around the workload. I think that can happen this year. I think they brought in Rico Dowdle. They drafted Travis Etienne's brother. I think those two are going to kind of compete for a backup role that will actually be used more than the backups were last season. And because, especially in the receiving game, Chuba was not efficient. Again, good because he was getting a lot of touches, but it's also not like the Panthers are going to be some amazing team this year. I don't know. I think it's just possible that we see a pretty big dip in production because I love so many of the running backs in this range. I just don't end up with that much Chuba. After Chuba, we have Alvin Kamara. He's going to be 30 when the season starts. That is not ideal. The running back position, not the end of the world for him, though. He's a pass catcher, right? He's not someone that's going to go out there before last year with Kubiak, but not someone that's going to go out there and have, 70 rushing yards per game. He's someone that is just going to rack up receptions. 75, 68 receptions last 2 years, despite playing 13 and 14 games in those seasons. It's not that I'm completely out on Alvin Kamara. I just also don't get him a ton, really more as a function of just drafting these other guys around him. For starters, again, the Saints are going to be bad. They are not going to score touchdowns. They're not going to be winning games. That is bad for running backs. It's not the end of the world for Kamara because he's going to have receptions, but there are just so many risk factors here. Does Shuck show signs of life, or is he trash? Does he throw to other running backs? Do they mix other running backs in? Does Kamara fall off at age 30? Does Kubiak leaving tank this offense? There was a downward trend for Kamara for 3 straight years before Kubiak, so it really could just be kind of that effect. I don't know. I think there's so many risk factors here, and I know he finished really well last season, and I know the receiving production can be there. So especially in full PPR, there's not a crazy amount of downside here, but in a half PPR league, the man did have 296 touches in 14 games last season. If you're concerned about Saquon having, 376 or 78 touches in 16 games, that's not that different from 296 touches in 14 games from Kamara, who's 2 years older and has not been someone who's had that workload throughout his career. So there are risk factors here. I think we got to watch camp reports and kind of see how much confidence we should have not only in this offense, but in the backups for the Saints. I could see myself kind of moving things around if it seems like he'll be featured, but I don't really want to be investing in this ground game because I do think that it was coaching a lot last season as to why they performed so well. At 20, RJ Harvey, another one that we love. He is third in the rookie running back rankings, is someone that I'm really excited about. I was excited about before the landing spot. Then the landing spot was the dream of all dreams. And so obviously I'm very excited both this season and in the future. I just think he can dominate as a pure runner and he can contribute enough in the passing game to where, or in the receiving game, I guess, to where this is a backfield, this is a coaching staff that will utilize their running backs through the air. I think in 10 seasons that Sean Payton has coached, he has had a top 4, or his running backs have been top 4 in receptions 9 times out of 10 years. And last year they were 8th. because they didn't have anyone to throw to. Like, they were really bad in the receiving game last year, really inefficient, so they kind of had to utilize other players. We could see 40 more targets going to these running backs this season from what we had last year. That's incredible upside. We know that Denver is going to have one of the best, if not the best, defenses in the league. Again, we know historically Sean Payton backfields are just crush it in fantasy. Last season, Javonte Williams was terrible on the ground as a receiver. McLaughlin had 3.2 yards per reception? Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's horrible estimate. We know couldn't catch a ball if it was handed to him. So they couldn't use the running backs in the receiving game. They didn't trust them late in games to run it. I think that all changes this year. Now, Dobbins is there, and the only reason Harvey is ranked this low is because of Dobbins. But Dobbins is never healthy, right? Like, he missed all 17 weeks in 2021. He missed 9 games in 2022. He missed 16 games in 2023 and 4 games last season. The odds are Dobbins is going to miss significant time this season. He's only played 32% of his possible games since 2021. Wouldn't be shocking if he missed time. Any week that Harvey misses, or that Dobbins misses, Harvey is going to be a running back 1. The upside is there. If you're going to be a league winner, I think the talent is there. I think the opportunity is there. Like, everything is there to where an injury and he's a league winner, no injury, and he's a great pick at this range. Those are who you want to draft. After Harvey, we have James Conner. Conner is going to be 30 and a half years old when the season starts. Not ideal. He's been pretty awesome, though, in recent years. So we haven't seen a drop-off yet. So that's a positive, right? He has at least 1,082 yards, 8 touchdowns in 4 straight seasons, back-to-back years, over 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns. It'll be interesting to see how involved Trey Benson is this summer. My expectation right now is that Conner is going to maintain his role as the lead back. He would need an injury to lose that role, and that he's going to be a pretty good pick in fantasy. You all know I love the Cardinals offense as well. They're going to have at most one bad weather game. They're going to face NFC South, a terrible division for defenses. Age is basically the only concern, but it's a big concern, right? Because you typically don't see breakouts at this age unless they're like clear-cut Hall of Famers, which James Conner is not. So age is a concern. I like a lot of these other running backs around him more, but if he becomes a top running back on the board at this ranking, I would absolutely take him. To round out this tier, we have TreVeyon Henderson. Henderson was taken in the early 2nd round by the Patriots this season. He is an unbelievable pass protector. He's a highly explosive runner, and he's great in the receiving game. So he hits in the areas we want in fantasy. One issue is that he's boom bust. And so if he's a rookie and he's boom bust, maybe the bust happens a little bit more often early in the year. He gets stuffed a little bit more. Boom bust, basically, he's just someone that tries to hit for a home run on every play, and that can lead to a lot of plays where you're gaining 0 negative yards. If that frustrates the Patriots coaching staff and they're like, dude, get what's blocked for you, please, they could just throw Stevenson out there a little bit more than we're expecting, especially early on. So that can be a problem. If you draft him, be that running back 2, you put him out there, he's only getting 7 to 9 touches per game to start the year, and you're like, what the heck, Nick? I thought you said he was going to be amazing. I think to close the season, he will be. I think there's an upside here to where he is close to a featured running back on a Patriots team that should have an improved offensive line, better coaching, better play calling, should be winning way more often. They have an 8.5 win total this season, scoring a lot more points. I think there's a lot of upside on this offense, but I think Stevenson's also pretty good, and so that's why he's at the end of this tier. It's not like Stevenson's some amazing running back, but he's just a good enough backup, and we'll get to him later in the video, to where I think there's a threat to the early down workload there. And again, I think people could be annoyed with how much Stevenson does play early in the season. Because of that, if you're in a redraft league, maybe it's possible. Again, TreVeyon starts a little bit slower and you can trade for him, but he's also probably a good enough prospect where people probably won't be willing to trade for him. So kind of up in the air here. I don't draft him a crazy amount, but again, what is TreVeyon good at? Pass protection, receiving. Okay, we want that in fantasy. Explosiveness. He can hit for big plays, and if he keeps doing that, Stevenson's not explosive. So if he is booming, then it's going to be the opposite, right? I could say if he's not breaking off these long plays, they're going to kind of bench him a little bit start the season. Well, if he just starts ripping off 30-yard gains to start the year, you better believe he's going to be out there. And if he gets that, plus the receiving, plus on a better offense than people are expecting, there's a lot of upside here. So again, maybe some more question marks, but the ceiling is undeniable. I do think he deserves to be in this tier. Kicking off tier 5, we have David Montgomery. Again, tier drop down 5. He's 28, so past his prime theoretically, but not too old, not at the age cliff. He's played at least 14 games, has earned at least 220 touches in all 6 seasons of his career. He has 13 and 12 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, finishing 12th and 13th in points per game. And he goes, in the 20s. So right off the bat, you're looking at a value. I think people are expecting the Lions to be worse this season, but realistically, he'd pay off his current ADP last year on 7.5 fewer touchdowns. So unless you really think the Lions are going to drop from 33 points per game to 23, they're probably still going to be good. They're probably still going to have a lot of touchdowns. He's probably still going to score a decent amount. Dan Campbell's also in love with him. There are not that many risks to David Montgomery. The basic thinking also is you have that. What if Gibbs got hurt, right? He's probably going to be someone who, is frustrating in weeks he doesn't score, but is someone that's probably providing you with low-end running back 2 production to mid-range 2 production, honestly, when Gibbs is healthy. But everyone wants to talk about the Gibbs upside if Monty gets hurt. Well, what about the Monty upside if Gibbs gets hurt? Now, Monty's a running back 1. So pretty darn good pick. Someone that if you're going kind of RB0, hero RB, makes sense to just grab someone you know is probably going to have 10 touchdowns this season, going to be stable and has that upside. So again, I think he's a good pick. 24, DeAndre Swift. Swift is the only running back last season to be on a bottom 5 offense in terms of points per game and to finish top 24 in fantasy points at the running back position. And we're expecting the Bears to get a lot better now having the Lions head coach, or Lions, offensive coordinator as their head coach. They're going to score more. Right, the Bears are not going to be a bottom 5 offense in points per game. So if Swift was able to be a top 24 running back on a bad offense, he's probably going to do it even better on a good offense. So he's also a really strong value. But again, that's what happens when you have a great running back class. This is an unbelievable running back class. You're just looking at running backs this season being you're a good value, you're a good value, you're a good value. But as we'll get to, it drops off. So you're going to want to be drafting a lot of these running backs this season. But yeah, he's also a good value at the running back 24. Because he's also been productive in his career. You think about DeAndre Swift. He's been running back 2 in all 5 seasons, at least 39 receptions in all 5 seasons, at least 6 touchdowns in all 5 seasons. He's good. He's a good running back that produces in the areas you want in fantasy. If the Bears are going to be better, even if he's not featured, he's still going to be very, very heavily utilized. He's basically going to be their version of Gibbs. And you want Gibbs on the Lions, right? So I don't know. And if for every day that they stick with Roschon and Monangai, I know some people are excited about each of those two. I still don't think either one of them is going to do all that much this season. Every day they stick with these guys, and this is going to be the trio they go with. Swift gains a ton of upside. So I really like drafting him this season as well. At running back 25, we have Kaleb Johnson. He was their 3rd round pick for the Steelers this season. Rookie, obviously. They basically view him as the replacement to Najee Harris. Let's not forget, though, how mediocre Najee has been in fantasy. Najee was a 1st-round pick. He had 4 straight 1,000-yard years, but he's only been the running back 30 and 26 in points per game the last 2 seasons, despite 29 and 36 receptions. He's had the yardage, he's had the receptions, but he's just kind of inefficient, right? He's had the yardage over 1,000, but it's barely over 1,000. He's had the receptions, but it's barely more than not doing that much. He's had touchdowns, but not really double digits. It's he's always been fine. But he was a 1st-round pick. So let's not pretend even if Kaleb Johnson is Najee 1-for-1, he's been 30th and 26 in points per game, and you're taking him here at 25. So there's still a world here where he is the next Najee, and that isn't good enough to produce at this level. I think some people are probably overrating the chances that a 3rd-round rookie ends up being insanely productive. He's probably not going to be a top 10 running back. That said, I think the touches are guaranteed. I think they are going to use him a lot. I think that he's going to be, at worst, some level of running back 3. So he's probably not going to be terrible. Also, Arthur Smith is just salivating over the idea of doing 2 and even 3 tight end sets and having Metcalf blocking. And that is a good thing for Kaleb Johnson to have that many, great blockers on the field. But it's a pretty safe bet he's going to finish in that running back 20 to 30 range in points per game. So probably not a league winner, but that's not the worst outcome if you're drafting someone at 25, 26, 27, and they're probably going to finish 20th to 30th. It's not ideal, and I don't attack it as heavily because like you could just go with Swift right there, who's someone who actually could be a top 10 running back. But so again, not bad, but it's not like the end of the world if you draft someone like that. At 26, we have Aaron Jones. And while they're very different players, him and Kaleb Johnson, I have a similar take. It's like Aaron Jones is going to be 30.7 to start the season. He's got a history of missing time with injury. He's almost certainly not going to have the goal line role this season. Players with that profile just don't have league-winning seasons. So it's pretty likely that Aaron Jones is going to be in that running back 20 to 30 range. He's someone that at this point, I'm like, I don't know how much I really want to be drafting him because even if the offense is great and the defense is great and he's getting this volume, he's probably going to be in that 20-30 range, and that's just not an amazing bet. If you look historically at players who were drafted in this general range, finish in this general range, they don't do anything. They don't increase your playoff chances. They don't increase your championship chances unless it was like, they ended up really rookies. If they start like 45th in points per game and then they finish like top 10 in points per game and they average 25th, if they kind of been drafted 25th and average 25th the whole season, it doesn't do anything for you. And so if you know a player is going to do that, you might as well opt for someone else for some better upside. At 27, we have Tony Pollard. Last season, there was plenty of talk about a split backfield, and then Spears couldn't stay healthy. And so we don't really know if they were like planning on doing the full split, but Pollard also played well enough to like maintain that lead role. So even when Swift got healthy for like a game or two, Pollard still just kind of had that role. 3 straight years over 1,000 rushing yards, 3 straight seasons over 1,300 total yards, second year in a row over 300 touches. Like, he's been pretty good. He also played at least 15 games in every season of his career. I know he had the one major injury, but it was late in the season. So at least 15 games in every year of his career. I don't want to say just 28, but he's still 28 years old. So at the tail end, but not over the age cliff. Also, we think the Titans are going to be better this season. Cam Ward at quarterback should elevate things. They should be more consistent. They should score more points. That is good. Worth noting, the touchdowns, they were so bad last season. He only scored 5 touchdowns on 301 touches. Up to that point in his career, and he was playing on Dallas, so you have to take that with a grain of salt. But he had a touchdown every 33.5 touches. And so he should have scored on average 9 touchdowns last year, not 5. If we kind of pull that back a little bit, again, being on the Titans, not Dallas, maybe he should have scored like 6 or 7. Like, he still did underperform a little bit based on the volume. So if we think the offense is going to function the same way, we think that they're just going to score more points, that he's maybe in line for another 300 touches, he's a pretty good value. I still think Spears is probably going to mix in a little bit more than last season if he can stay healthy. I don't think Pollard really has the upside to be a running back 1. So I think, like, in this tier, Monty, Swift, they probably have the ceiling to kind of break out of this tier to be really good. I think starting with Kaleb Johnson, the path to running back 1 numbers for honestly almost every other player on this list, but definitely in this tier, is a lot more thin. They definitely need an injury or to have like the best season of their career. Final running back in this tier is Quinshon Judkins, a player that's a little bit difficult to evaluate right now. He's got the charges against him. I have no idea if the charges will be dropped. I have no idea if there'll be a court date early in the season. I have no idea if he'll be suspended this year or next year, if it'll come at all. Like, we have no idea. His ADP right now is tanking because people have no idea what's going to happen. But to be fair, he was overvalued a little bit before the ADP started to tank. It's starting to tank into a range where he probably should have been before. I think in this next week, we're going to learn a lot more. So I'm just going to hold where I have him right now at 28. ADP is basically at that spot at this point, but dropping. I think right now I'd still be fine taking him where he goes in drafts like now. And so if he's going to keep cratering, maybe it's a good spot to kind of gain some exposure to him, because I wasn't drafting before because he was being overvalued. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. The Browns are projected to be the lowest scoring team in the league. There was only one running back on a bottom 5 team in points per game last year that finished top 25. And he did it, DeAndre Swift, because he had a lot of receiving production. Quinshon Judkins is not going to have a lot of receiving production. He's not going to have a lot of receptions. And so if they're going to be a bottom 5 scoring team and he's not going to score a lot, he's not going to be a running back 2 or better. And he was being drafted as, like a low-end running back 2. And so he was a bad pick before. He's cratering in drafts. He's becoming a better pick, but we kind of have to just see, right? And I don't want this to seem like he's a great pure runner. He just can't or isn't going to be used a lot in the receiving game. Not that he can't catch, he just won't be used a lot in that area. So again, if he keeps cratering, he could be a good enough player to where like the charges get dropped, nothing comes of it as suspension, they feature the ground game around him, and he does really good, right? But you probably don't want to be getting too much exposure to him right now because we have no idea what is going to happen. Overall, though, I would say like tier 5 is probably just not my favorite. Again, I like Monty. I like Swift. I think Caleb and Aaron Jones are relatively safe and they make sense in certain builds. But there's a very clear drop-off if you look from tier 4 into tier 5. And my guess this season is that any league winners we get this year, and a league winner would be someone who actually makes a big difference in getting your team into the playoffs. That would be a league winner, right? Someone who on their own elevates, gives you a bigger chance, gives you a 10, 20% better chance of making the playoffs. That is a league winner. My guess is that all running back league winners this season, unless it is a pure handcuff because of an injury, will come from a top 4 tier player. So I would hate any team that fades that range entirely. I definitely would want to be drafting 2 of the top 22 running backs this season. And my favorites, considering ADP, would be Breece Hall, Omarion Hampton, Ken Walker, and RJ Harvey. Obviously, I would love a team that has Saquon, Bijan, Gibbs. I would love a tier 2 running back, right? I like a lot of the top 22. In fact, I love a lot of the top 22. But in terms of ADP value, Breece, Hampton, Ken Walker, and Harvey would probably be my favorites. And I would probably want 2 of the top 22. You kind of pick the ones that you want. You pick the draft strategy that gets you to 2 of them. But I would want 2 because there's a very good top end of running back this season. And when we get into this range, it's not as good. There's not only a very low floor, but there's also a pretty absent ceiling from a lot of the running backs we're going to talk about in tier 6 and tier 7. On to tier 6, though. Start off with Pacheco. Really haven't been drafting him much this season. Through 48 career games, he has hit 100 rushing yards 4 times. He's hit 37 receiving yards once. He has 1 multi-touchdown game. I think Hunt could be a thing this season. I think Brashard Smith is going to have a role on third downs. I think that Elijah Mitchell could even make the team and mix in on third downs for some explosiveness on early downs. There is almost no chance that any running back on Kansas City truly breaks out and is even just like slightly featured. Like I just don't think there's a chance that they don't go with the committee. They're going to be a 3 running back committee no matter who wins any sort of starting job. I don't see why you would want to invest heavily in a situation like that. So I really wouldn't be drafting much Pacheco, and I don't. At 30, we have Bijan Robinson Jr. Through 3 seasons, he's failed to run for over 800 yards in a single season. He's finished 37th, 21st, and 27th in points per game. He fits a very similar mold of some players we talked about recently where like there's a pretty good chance that Bijan Robinson Jr. returns value. And so if you are in this range and that is what you want, go for it. He's pretty safe. He's going to have some touchdowns. They're going to be a good offense. I don't think there's a very good chance that anyone like takes over that starting role. So he's going to be solid. So if that's what you're looking for, go for it. If you're looking for someone who has a chance to actually be a difference maker, which realistically in this range is probably what you should be looking for, right? 10.5 points per game is probably what you should expect from Bijan Robinson Jr., and that's not going to do anything. Like you put that at running back 2, you could have gotten that from a lot of different other running backs. You put that in the flex spot, you could have gotten that from a lot of other positions even. Like that is not going to make a difference. He can be on your team when you make the playoff, win the championship. He's not going to be the reason you do so. So I wouldn't do it personally that much. Like the Commanders averaged 29 points per game last season. That's probably not getting any better. Daniel's still going to steal rushing touchdowns. Debo might even mix in a little bit more for rushing touchdowns this season. So again, if you want a locked-in running back 3, he's your guy. Historically, those types of players where you draft them at this spot and they slightly even overperform, they are not players that provide any sort of difference to your chances of making the playoffs and winning a championship because they don't provide that much value over replacement level players. And so, again, if they're not changing your odds of making the playoffs and winning a championship, why really go after them? At 31, we have Jordan Mason, who is finally someone who does have that level of upside. He's got a lower floor. So again, if you care about needing to hit on this player, needing to hit on someone who's going to be like mediocre in the flex spot, go with Bijan Robinson Jr. If you want someone who could win you a championship, you go with Jordan Mason. It's an elite offense. It's a team with an unbelievable defense. He's very likely going to open the season even as a goal line back with no injury to Aaron Jones, but he has a 30-and-a-half-year-old running back ahead of him who's struggled to stay healthy, who the coaching staff doesn't believe they can overload with touches, so they had to bring in Jordan Mason, who was handpicked in a class that was really good, right? This is a great running back class, and they were like, nope, I don't want them. I want Mason. That says a lot. So there's a path here for like 17-plus touches per game for Mason. He was unbelievable last season, like among 46 qualified running backs, second in explosive run rate, third in yards after contact per attempt, sixth in missed tackles forced per attempt. He was great. He is someone that if Aaron Jones got injured, you'd be pumped every week to start running back 2, could put up running back 1 numbers. And if Aaron Jones stays healthy, you're probably not playing Mason, but you probably shouldn't plan on playing any of the running backs in this range anyways. Like in week 1, if you're starting one of these guys, it better be because you went wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, and now you're trying to start hitting on some running backs later on. Like that better be the reason you did so. And personally, I would be like, well, why'd you avoid the top 22 that I said was really good this season and you should be attacking? So still a great pick. He was the top 5 running back through week 5, literally last season. The Vikings were very aggressive in getting him for agency. They have a plan for him. Again, he's not going to hit that upside with Aaron Jones healthy, but Aaron Jones has been hurt before. At 32, we have Jaylen Warren. Warren, of course, now going to decrease in value. Well, same value as he had with Najee, but it was like, oh, Najee's gone, increases in value, draft Kaleb Johnson back down to the Najee value. But honestly, like he was still relatively productive in not last year, but the year before when they had Najee. So last year he was hurt, but in 2023, even in a year that Najee had 284 touches, Jaylen Warren gained 1,154 yards. He scored 4 touchdowns on 210 touches. He ranked 33rd in fantasy points per game. Obviously, that's not what you want, right? You don't want 33rd in points per game in this range. You want a top 20 season because you need a top 20 season to actually be useful in fantasy. But again, that was in the year where Najee had 284 touches. I think Kaleb Johnson is the locked-in early down back. I think that is, I don't want to say a reasonable expectation, but that is in the range of outcomes for Kaleb Johnson. But we don't know that for sure. I mean, Kaleb Johnson is still a 3rd-round rookie running back. 3rd-round rookie running backs bust all the time. And so if Warren just outplays Kaleb Johnson, he has really strong upside this season, especially since, we know that Warren is going to be the locked-in passing down back. Kaleb Johnson can't catch. There's no plan for him to even compete for the passing down role. And so my gut says they still want to just plug Kaleb Johnson into the Najee role and that Warren is still going to be someone you can't really use. But there is for sure a chance that Kaleb Johnson is just worse than we think. And if that happens, Warren is going to outperform his ADP. Final running back in tier 6 is Tyrone Tracy Jr., someone that I've warmed up to as the summer has gone along. We'll talk about Skattebo to begin the next tier. I had them very close. I do think that Tyrone Tracy Jr. deserves to be a tier above Skattebo. He was really good. I don't want to say great, but he was really good as a rookie. He's definitely a better pure runner than Cam Skattebo. I think Cam is a threat to Tyrone Tracy Jr.'s role. I think that's why he's, a tier 6 running back at the end of tier 6, and why he's the final player in this tier. But at the end of the day, Tracy Jr. just had 1,123 yards and 6 touchdowns as a rookie on the 2nd lowest scoring team in the league. That is impressive no matter how you look at it. So you also consider like the limitations of Skattebo are that he has no burst, no athleticism, and he can't pass protect. And so that could keep him off the field more than expected. I don't know. I think Tracy Jr. is a pretty good bet for a decent role. It's just that the Giants aren't going to be that good, and Skattebo is still there. So, he doesn't have that high of a ceiling. 7th, final tier. We will start off with Skattebo. Again, no burst, can't pass protect, so that's going to limit your ceiling and obviously give you a lower floor. With that being said, he's perfectly willing to just run over people, so he could be the goal line back. He's got a great receiving profile, even though he can't pass protect. So a world still exists where they use him as that, passing down back and just say, well, don't pass protect, right? Go out there. But the problem is, even if you think that's going to happen, it could still be like, full on pressure. They have to leave him in there and they're like, wait, we can't leave him in there. And they're just like, why is he on the field? Right. So you still need to be able to pass protect as a passing down back. There's risk here. I don't think either one of these guys is going to be a true difference maker. Again, I don't think a lot of people in this range will be, but Tyrone Tracy Jr. is a tier above Skattebo because he's just a better running back. At 35, we have Zach Charbonnet. This one's pretty easy. He's one of the best pure handcuffs in the league. He would be a featured running back if Ken Walker got hurt, but I can promise you, Ken Walker is a better running back. He's a better fit for Seattle's scheme. So Zach is not going to be playable in any way, even in deeper formats, when Ken Walker is healthy. It is not a threat to Ken Walker's role as the lead back, but Ken Walker has struggled staying healthy, and no one is immune to an injury. So I think Charbonnet is like the premier handcuff in the NFL. And again, I think the offensive system could be really good for running backs this year. And so if Walker got hurt, you're going to want to start Charbonnet every week. That makes him a good pick in this range as a just pure handcuff. At 36, we have Travis Etienne. If you use the rankings, you're probably not going to get any Travis Etienne, but that is by design. I'm sure you can see at the end of here, end of the screen here, it's Tuten, so we can go over both of them now. I think Tuten has a chance to be an elite running back. I think he is objectively far more explosive than Travis Etienne. Etienne has been, mediocre for years now. I mean, he's been highly inefficient as a runner. He's been inefficient in the receiving game. I think the new staff came in and realized that they needed a change, and thus they went after Tuten. I think Bigsby is also there. So, truly, who knows how it's going to shake out. My gut still says it's a camp battle, and that whoever loses the battle, they try and trade. And since my guess is that Etienne would have the most trade value and is the more likely one they want to trade away, they're not going to trade Tuten, obviously, just having drafted him. And I think Bigsby also complements Tuten really well. And so I feel like that duo is really good. And again, if Etienne's probably going to have the most trade value, you trade him. I don't know. I think it makes sense. I also think we just want Jaguars. I think we want to be investing in this offense. I want Brian Thomas Jr. I want Travis Hunter. I want Trevor Lawrence. I maybe want to take a shot on Strange later on. And I want Tuten. I think I want Tuten. I think I want Bigsby. I think I don't want Etienne. But if we get into camp and it looks like Etienne is running away with the job and it's nope, he's the guy, he's performing well, I will move him up the rankings because I want exposure to this team. I think Liam Cohen is a great coach. I think he's great at scheming his players open. We want that in fantasy. I think he's going to elevate this offense to where we thought they could be decent last year. I think all expectations in my mind are for the Jaguars to take a huge step forward. And so you want to be investing in those offenses. 37. But again, Tuten, I think, is a better value than Etienne. At 37, we have J.K. Dobbins, as we discussed before. He's only 26, but his body's been through it, right? He has probably the body of a 40-year-old. He missed the entire 2021 season, missed 9 games in 2022, 16 games in 2023, 4 games last season. Theoretically, he has upside, right? And theoretically, maybe he doesn't get hurt if he has a lower role. But the odds he can stay healthy is relatively low. Harvey's a better running back. So at best, he's the 1B, and he's probably at best the 2. But that still has upside, right? Denver is still going to use multiple running backs. They still have a great scheme that is great for running backs. They still have a phenomenal defense. Maybe, again, it can keep him fresh, keep him healthy if he's not out there a ton. But again, we love Harvey. I think Dobbins is set up well, but between the two of them, you want Harvey. And for the people saying that it's McLaughlin can take the receiving workload, McLaughlin has that theoretical receiving role. I think because he's a smaller back, people are oh, he must be good in the receiving game. 3.2 yards per reception last year. And he was inefficient in year 1, too. He's a very inefficient receiving back through 2 years. 3.2 yards per reception is unimaginably low. Draft Harvey and sprinkle in some Dobbins. But don't worry about Estime and McLaughlin. At 38, we have Rhamondre Stevenson. I think Stevenson has earned this status as one of the premier handcuffs in the NFL. But again, that is all he is. I do think he's going to have an annoying role to open the year. And it's going to come down to how good is TreVeyon Henderson, how explosive he ends up being. But again, Henderson is more explosive. He's better in the receiving game. He's better in pass protection. So we know that it's going to be Henderson as the more valuable back and that you're not going to be able to start Stevenson unless it's a 16-team league with multiple flex spots. Maybe you can throw him in there, but he's the premier handcuff. If TreVeyon Henderson got hurt, Stevenson would be a weekly must start. Same thing as Charbonnet. So if you're looking for that kind of mold in this range, those are two to go after. Then finally, because we already mentioned Tuten is 40th, 39th, we have Najee. Who knows if he can even see at this point. I don't know. I'm assuming that he's going to be fine. But again, I don't know. we'll see. There's going to be images, right? There's going to be pictures. Once camps open up, which is like right around now, finally we're getting to camps opening up. Finally some news there. Once we get camps rolling around, we get camps opening up, and we can see these guys play, we will probably get more reports on the actual injury here, how long he'll be out for. You can honestly throw him in the same bucket as Charbonnet and Stevenson, though. Like, the Chargers are going to run the ball a ton. Hampton's a locked-in one, but no one is immune to injury. And so if Hampton were to go down, Najee would be a weekly auto start in fantasy. Definitely a track his status, right? Definitely a situation to watch and camp again on the NFI list, but he can come off that at any time. He is not a threat to miss time in season until he's on that list still when they do roster cuts, but that's still a decent amount of time away. So don't worry yet, but he's still a handcuff. So it's like, if he's going to crater, you can still draft him as a handcuff because that's all he ever has been. And the odds that Hampton suffered a season-long injury first couple weeks is minimal anyway. So even if you had the 4 weeks missed, it's like, well, he's still a handcuff and Hampton's probably not going to get hurt right away. So I don't think it's a huge deal, but also, is he a pirate? Like, I don't even know. Like, does he have an eye anymore? Like, I don't know what the situation for Najee is until we know that. Draft Hampton. But honestly, even not knowing that, draft Omarion Hampton. All right, that was roughly, an 84-minute video, something around those lines, a little bit longer than the wide receiver one. Please leave a like. If you're still here, that is greatly appreciated. If you are yet to subscribe on YouTube or on Spotify, what are you waiting for? It is completely free to do. It takes you 1 second. It's right next to the like button. Just click them both. Click the bell icon as well while you're down there. All that's going to do is tell YouTube, tell Spotify, hey, I might want to watch the future videos that this person is putting out there. If you enjoy my takes as well, you can see even more on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. My must draft list will be out soon. The running backs I talked about today are going to be on that list, but it's going to be a detailed look at my favorite picks among all position. That will be out there soon on the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. My rankings are also updated daily, so as we finally get into camps, we're going to have more news. Things are going to shift around. The rankings are going to become more and more and more accurate as you move through the summer. So know that you can screenshot this and certainly draft with it, but in 4 days, things are going to move around. So understand that. I think this is a great video to refer back to for the rankings and tiers and player takes. But if you want the most accurate rankings, do it on the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Also, if you have access to those, make sure you're downloading the app for free. You can draft directly on the app this season. You can also view the player notes. So if you want to go in there and just click through player notes and read them all, you can do that directly from your phone. It's way better than opening the website on your phone. I put a ton of time into the app this offseason, so please download it. Again, it's 100% free. You don't even need access to the website. You can download the app for free for all of you. All right, I need to stop talking. Please, for the 3 of you that are still listening at this point, please leave a like. It is greatly appreciated. I'll see you all on Monday, though, for another episode of Mock Draft Monday.